All right, I've got 6:30 now. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Council Committee meeting, August 15th, 2017. All right, first item on the agenda is under Public Works. Mr. Cahill, Mr. Skidmore.
Yes, you should have received from Mr. Bogart a estimate of the cost for the dog park that was discussed at the last council meeting, and with some insurance and ongoing maintenance concerns that are out there. So I saw that flash up. Do we have a picture? No. Okay. Fencing cost is going to be like 20 to 25,000 in some of the areas on the east side location. West side location would be about $5,000. So we're talking an estimate of anywhere from $13,750 to $37,000, depending on the location that this will be utilized for. What we're asking for tonight is just opinions from City Council to look at this. Probably recommend for the 2019 budget to do a further in-depth survey and study on this instead of looking at this for the next fiscal year. So.
Any other thoughts on that? I think that sounds like a wise idea to do more of an in-depth survey. Any other? Jessica?
For the east side location, do we have like the dimensions?
I didn't go out and measure it. It's the second blade over in the Glades Park. So
Okay.
it's a little bit over 600 feet of fencing roughly is what we would put around it.
Okay, so the 20,000 to 25,000, that's 600.
That's all the fencing that we thought was required that they felt would be adequate to get that taken care of in the manner that we would.
Okay, I just wondered because the west side location, the fencing is drastically lower.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I'm not feeling
Thank
this
you.
anyway. Gotta find signs of that, so get her to talk in the bucket.
Oh, good. Okay.
How many people actually wanted that? How many, did they have signatures? They did a survey, didn't they?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there were 162 signatures.
A lot of those signatures weren't even around the area, though, that weren't going to be affected by a dog park, which I thought, I looked at several of the addresses and I thought, well, sure, it's okay, as long as you build a dog park, but not in my backyard.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to know those who are actually going to be surrounded by it, if they're, how many of those are on the list and are really okay with it, is what I would be thinking, because not everybody's a dog lover.
What would you consider would be surrounding the Glades?
What's the little side street that?
Probably talking Circlewood, that area.
Yeah, Circlewood,
Spring Valley?
All the woods?
yeah.
All the woods?
Around it.
Bottomwood,
Bottomwood,
Circlewood?
Circlewood, yeah, probably all of those around there.
Okay.
But in particular, those ones that literally go around the park. I know we had a lot of complaints when we had baseball that was there, balls going into people's yards. Finally, we couldn't have portalets there anymore because everybody destroyed them and burnt them down and whatever. And then when we put up park equipment, they burned slides down, anything that was plastic. So there's a lot of things that went on. I don't know if it still is, Rick, do you still have too many issues? No, yeah. So I think then putting in a dog park,
Okay.
I think those people should be the ones that mostly should have a say, because it's part of their yards.
Okay, that makes sense. Rick, in the proposal that you put together here, where would people park?
For the one out on the east side, Mayor, it would be around 4,100 Narrows out in the parking lots to the sides of each of the buildings, or over off the Ridgewood Drive entrance to Spring Valley Park. So
Okay,
that would be the intent.
Okay.
That's what's there.
okay, great.
I have a question. Do we have walking trails in that area?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And would that not interfere with those walking
Those
trails
would
for
be,
people?
this area, what we've looked at would be kept off the walking trails.
Okay, yeah. All right, thanks.
So ordinarily, who mans these? I mean, who, like, checks them out or whatever?
We would have to check on it on a daily basis. This is all new territory for us. I did reach out to Kenton County to see what type of problems they have and what they deal with their park, but I did not get a response prior to the meeting. So that's kind of an unknown factor for us. Yeah. So the other lower glade that we've looked at actually has, as I stated, some screening, some existing screening around that. So that was one other reason that we chose that, just to, hope that would offset some things. I understand you're talking over at Farmwood, Hillwood area, I believe, is what actually backs up to the glades. So that would be the area you'd want to concentrate on to get some feedback from those folks to make sure they were on board. So.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if we move forward with a survey, is that something, Tom, is that something that you'd be willing to chair?
Yeah, I think we should do a survey with that, look at those folks, and also look at the feasibility study cost, get actual measurements, things like that on this moving forward, so.
Okay.
But we can push, I don't know if this is something we want to do, because I know we have some funding for park improvements, but they are slated for the tennis courts for Silver Lake, which are in dire needs also. So that would be our recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts or discussion on that? Mrs. Fetty?
Is there a way for you to show us where you are thinking about putting it? Like, is it closer to the Ridgewood side, like on the opposite side of the baseball field?
No, it's actually facing the Narrows Road building that's off to the left. So in Glades Park. So I don't know if Sherry can pull it up on Google Earth.
Okay.
Sorry I didn't get a chance to do that.
It's okay.
There was so pretty much in the areas where Mr. Blair had identified?
So the one that he indicated is just a little bit further off there.
Yeah.
Was it in the email that you sent, Rick, with okay, then I don't have it.
Okay. Every council member should have received Mr. Blair's, the petition, the documentation, and then there was also a map that identified 2 different areas. Both of them very close to Station 3, basically on each side of Station 3. Okay, if there's no more to discuss there, then we'll move on to the next item, which is under administration. Mrs. Skidmore, Mrs. Cahill? Or is this for me to?
This is.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, so this is regarding the NKY Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And I think has everybody had a chance to see the resolution? And I've got an email here from the NKADD regarding this hazardous mitigation plan. I would say, my gut would be not to sign this right offhand. I'm certainly open to discussion on that. I have a tough time seeing what the benefit is for Erlanger to be a part of this. The one thing that is said in the document, the backup documentation, the email, and the resolution is that the city could be in receipt of certain future federal mitigation funding. But this is an act that was created in 2000. It's 2017. And, there's a 363-page document that identifies the hazards of tornadoes and earthquakes and ash borer beetles and landslides and all kinds of things. But to me, it doesn't really make it very clear what the mitigation plan addresses or how that would affect or help our city.
Miss Emily Carnahan from the Ad District is here tonight. I asked her to come. She was one of the main participants in creating this plan and doing it, and why it's a regional plan. So if there are any questions about the plan and why they've asked each city to adopt it in the counties, Emily? Yeah.
So basically, it is a
federal plan. The federal guidelines were adopted in 2000. This is our third iteration of the plan, so it comes up again every 5 years. In Kentucky, the ad districts do it, so you know, in a lot of other states, each community has to do their own, so we do a regional one to sort of save on resources. And a lot of places have similar natural hazards anyway. As the mayor mentioned, it is the main purpose of the plan is for your city to be eligible for pre-disaster mitigation funding. So if, you know, a disaster strikes your city, those are completely different funds. This doesn't have anything to do with that. But, you know, if you have flooding issues or landslide issues or things you would want to take care of beforehand, there are FEMA dollars set aside for that. And pretty much the only thing you have to do is just adopt this plan to be eligible for those. It is a very large document since there are 8 counties inside of it. There is, for the risk assessment part, which talks about what the mayor had mentioned, there is just a specific Kenton County part, which also mentions some specific things about Erlanger in it. But yeah, this also, I mean, if you don't have any pre-disaster mitigation funding projects, you know, there really is not a benefit per se, but it is for 5 years. So, you know, if 4 years down the road, you decide you do want to do something, you know, you would be prepared. In this plan, the mayor also mentioned where was the mitigation strategy part of it. It is the shorter part of it, but it's sort of in the back, and it just sort of lists some goals and objectives and different examples of projects that would be something that a lot of communities in our area might benefit from. So, but if you do adopt the plan, it doesn't obligate you to do anything. So you can just have it if you need it, basically.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I didn't receive this, so I have not read it. So I don't really understand it. But my question is this something that would help on the Concord situation where there's flooding?
I'm not so sure.
I don't know.
I'm not so sure Concord, simply because, you know, that's probably going to be more of one of those man-made with the street runoff and those kind of things like that, and the storm sewers and those kind of things. The thing that I believe, and I know Mark Stewart went to the meetings, and Dave can speak a little bit more, some of the things that we have experienced with the slides that have gone into the creeks, the slides down on Bullock Pen Road, on Pleasure Isle, and I see Rick and Dave shaking their heads, so I'm guessing I'm hitting the right ones here. Those kind of things. And what the plan does is allow us to apply for federal funds. If we do not have a hazardous mitigation plan, we cannot apply for those federal funds. That's just the bottom line.
Is there any fee for us to be part of this?
I can't hear you.
Is there a fee?
No, there's not. The ad district where I worked for, we actually received a grant to do this, so there's no fee for the cities or counties.
So then I don't see why we shouldn't do it just in case.
So
Yeah,
no
we don't
bonus?
lose anything.
What are the cons?
Okay, so if we had a slide, those FEMA dollars are still available to us.
After, right. This is before. This is mitigation. If, in fact, we do pre-planning or whatever, if, in fact, you see something that is about to occur,
Yeah.
right, it's to mitigate it before the act occurs.
All right, so if I understand, if we don't do this, we can still get FEMA funds after a disaster.
Yeah.
But without this, we can't get them to prevent a disaster if we see it coming.
Yes.
Well, I think we should.
Okay.
That's pretty simple. That's the way.
Yeah.
But we also have
It
to
doesn't cost us
follow,
anything to do it.
we also have to follow the plan maintenance procedures that are you know, appointed by the Northern Kentucky Area Development District, too.
Well, what are the negatives of those procedures? I didn't get this, I never received
none of
this
us have it.
document,
We don't
so
get to
I
read it, so
have
don't
not had a
anything
chance to
about it.
read it.
Oh, and that's my fault, because I didn't send out the 400-page document to everybody,
for
okay?
Pete's sake.
So, you know, so.
You know we've got all this down.
Can you tell me how many other cities in northern Kentucky have adopted this?
Yeah, so there's 61 total jurisdictions in our 8-county region. So far, almost 50.
Okay.
And I expect only a couple holdouts, really.
Have any of the jurisdictions that have adopted it complained that the regulations are too onerous to comply with?
No, the plan maintenance procedures, those are really for if, you know, people really want to get involved. In the past, we've met a couple times in the intervening 5 years before plan updates, but it's mostly just the update process, which several Erlanger people attended those meetings just to give some input. That's mostly what it is.
And how long has it been since they signed on?
Everyone is currently signing on. You mean the other cities and counties?
But I mean, okay, so when did the first person sign on? First city, I should say.
For this iteration, I think I received the first adoption in the beginning of July.
Okay, so since July to August, there haven't been any complaints about it being too onerous?
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, how about in prior iterations of it, were there complaints about the regulations being too onerous?
No, I don't think so. For the plan purposes, there aren't really a lot of regulations to go along with it. Now, if you actually do receive a FEMA grant, those are a lot of different regulations.
Right, if you seek such a grant, I'm
Sure.
there's a lot of requirements to comply with, but to just do this, there's really nothing we have to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Nicely on it. He's been-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Nicey, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Go ahead. Now, I understand you're just talking about natural hazards,
Yes.
not the hazard that comes through on the road and the railroads.
No, FEMA has discussed adding different non-natural hazards to the plan, but at this time it's only natural hazards that it deals with.
So at this time, we have nothing for hazard material that comes through.
No, like you mean like hazmat, like on the railroads and things. This doesn't deal with that.
No, there is, Mr. Nicely, there is other programs that deal with that. Not on the mitigation side, but on the response side for cleanups and things like that. There are other programs that kick in to do that. Every time that we've had some kind of chemical spill, whether it be on the interstate, thank God we've never had one that I can remember from the railroad, or it's been an awful long time, but the interstates, we always get reimbursed for those cleanups and things like that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Mrs. Camp.
I would just like your input as to why you are hesitant to sign this. You personally, why, what is your?
Well, okay, so it's not up to me personally.
Oh, I know, well, but you seem to be the only one that is really feeling very strongly about not taking part in this.
Yeah, so, you know, I guess I assumed that everybody else had read this, and I kind of wondered why, you know, why we hadn't talked more about it.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
So, yeah, I think it's just maybe my nature in that erring to the side of caution and not jumping into signing an agreement that may never help the city, but may but may like hamstring us, you know, with regulations. I don't know.
Oh, nor do I.
So
Those
I don't know.
regulations, though, they don't kick in unless we're applying for funds, right?
Yeah, the plan, there are plan maintenance procedures in the plan, but mostly in the past, what all those have been are just a couple meetings. And, you know, there are like certain strategies and things that are in the plan, but, you know, if you want to add or amend it at some point between the 5 years, FEMA now accepts amendments. So things can be sort of changed if, you know, there's a strong need for that.
And that could be city by city?
Yes,
Well,
amendments can be city by
attractive.
city.
I think I saw some other hands up down here. Mrs. Kyle?
I was just going to say, is there some place online where we can look at this? I hate to think about reading it, but I can
It's actually
skim
not
through
that
to the
bad.
good part, maybe.
If you think, I mean, sorry to butt in, but it's really not that bad. It sounds like a lot, but being that it addresses so many counties and so many cities, it actually, I mean, there's a lot of it that doesn't apply to us, so you can kind of flip through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's on the ad website. I don't know if maybe Mark can send everyone the email, or I can send Mark the link again and send it out. But there is a county like annex for the risk assessment part, so like the mayor was saying, you can just kind of skip over all the other 7 counties and review it that way.
Okay.
And
After the meeting, I'll go in my office and look it up and make sure everybody gets it.
And I will just add that there have been some other communities hesitant, like wondering, exactly what they were getting into as well. But I mean, like I said, it really can only benefit you. It doesn't obligate you to do anything. So it's really just sort of tacking yourself onto it.
Okay. All right, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, if there's no more on that, did I see one other hand up? Was there anything else to discuss? Okay. We'll move on to codes, building, and zoning. The first item under there is the Eastern Bypass, and we've got Mr. Greg Fisher here this evening to talk to us about it. Welcome.
Can I control this, Sherry?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm here representing the Northern Kentucky United and the Citizens for the Cincy Eastern Bypass. Northern Kentucky United was formed during the whole toll argument about 3 years ago for I-75, and the Cincy Eastern Bypass was kind of a spin-off from that, as proposing an option as an alternative to the 16-lane bridge for I-75. So what I'm going to do, I did this presentation for the mayor's group. I'm going to go really fast, and I welcome a lot of questions, and I'm prepared to answer a lot after that. So, but in the interest of getting everybody the opportunity to speak about it, I'm just going to blow through it.
Okay.
So, bottom line is the Northern Kentucky United believes that the $2.6 billion Brent Spence Corridor project is bad for Kentucky and bad for Erlanger, and that's why I'm here to speak to you tonight. So this goes back to history. Okay, this goes back to the interstate mapping and the history of I-275. So Cincinnati has, does this laser too? It's not laser? No. Okay, Cincinnati has three major interstates coming in on the Ohio side, I-74, I-71, and I-75. All of those interstates funnel down through I-71, 75, Brent Spence Bridge. So that's the major cause of the problem. In addition, when they formulated I-275, 16 miles outside of downtown on the north, east, and west side, and they brought it into 6 miles outside of downtown on the south side to access the airport and to give the east side, Claremont County, access through I-471 to downtown. That way they didn't have to put an Eastern Corridor project. So effectively, for the convenience of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, they brought the loop in, basically just inside of Erlanger, and didn't give us the opportunity to expand further out with better transportation corridors. So why is this why are tolls a problem for Erlanger in Northern Kentucky? Well, let me get through a couple quick ideas. One, this is a study done by KYTC. It's what would happen if there's a $2 toll on the Brent Spence Bridge. So this outlines where people would go, or what would happen if there's a $2 toll. It basically says it's half the traffic on the Brent Spence Bridge that's there today would go an alternate route. So it's eerily similar to what's happening right now. And you guys are readily aware of what's happening. More than half the traffic's moving. 24,000 cars would move the Clayway Bailey Bridge. 25,000 would go to I-471. And then the Roebling would go up to 10,000 and Taylor Southgate to 12. And also an extra 7,000 cars would go around I-275. So it's presenting problems. We're seeing it today. Basically, you could toll the current bridge and it would solve the same problem. It wouldn't utilize the capacity of a new bridge. Secondly, it puts us, Northern Kentucky, at an economic disadvantage. And this is what I'm most concerned about, is as an employer, we employ roughly 300 people in Northern Kentucky, right near Erlanger, off Mineola. More than half our employees are coming from Cincinnati, the Ohio side. Additionally, most of our business is on the Ohio side. It would be very logical for us to avoid those tolls and relocate. And certainly that would be similar for any of your businesses. Indiana and Louisville has tolls on their bridge. Indiana was already feeling the drawbacks of having tolls and being separated from Louisville. And they're actually the state is actually re-incentivizing the businesses by giving them a rebate on their employees' tolls. So essentially, Indiana's paying for that bridge to stay connected to Kentucky and Louisville. So in this case, Kentucky would be on the receiving end, if you will. Okay, so what's wrong with the $2.6 billion project? One is it's not replacing the Brent-Spence Bridge. So the Brent-Spence Bridge is going to stay in its current form. Again, it's structurally sound. It's just overloaded. Nobody dispute that. But they're going to add another companion bridge for a total of 16 lanes. So what's the problem with 16 lanes? Well, it's great. It's a lot of capacity. Well, there's no plan. The plan ends in Fort Mitchell. So you're going to funnel all the traffic that's built up in downtown and on I-75 and 71, and you're going to drain them as fast as you can and stop in Fort Mitchell. And in the 2040 OKI plan, actually just recently they started talking about this interchange out here on 275, but there's no additional lane expansion all the way to Walton. So we still have all the same problems we had originally with the three interstates funneling into one. And the solution, after spending $2.6 billion, is we just have a really nice place to build up the traffic in Kentucky instead of leaving it in Ohio. So it doesn't help your commute in Erlanger. You're still going to be stuck in a different bottleneck. It's just moving it. So what are the problems with this OKI proposal? One is it's extremely expensive. It's like $300 million a mile. For effectively one lane of capacity. It turns I-71 and 75 into a parking lot during evening rush hours, so it doesn't solve the problem. Covington's come out and not supporting the project as a whole, much less with tolls, because of the scale of the solution and what it does to their city. It doesn't help I-71 in Ohio, it doesn't help I-275 in northern Kentucky, and it doesn't help I-471. So not only do we have a fix for a 6-mile stretch, it doesn't help I-275, which we're already seeing as a problem. And I-471, just recently, KYTC mentioned that they got ideas for another $1.8 billion one-lane expansion to I-471. So again, $30 million a mile. Actually, that's another $300 million a mile there. I guess fundamentally the other thing is there's not much opportunity for job growth. Much of the I-75 corridor is already developed. While there's some redevelopment opportunity, which we're all excited about, and you guys have some great opportunities still along the interstate, it's limited. And then, again, the funding issues, tolls hurt northern Kentucky and put us at a disadvantage. So one of the challenges that when we started being a naysayer was, what are you going to do about it? You don't have a better solution. Well, we came up with one. So at a minimum, if you're going to say that the solution is expand the Brent-Spence Bridge, we need to build it all the way to Walton. Okay, we can't just stop halfway. We need to be committed to building it all the way to Walton and increasing all the interchanges. It involved redoing the entire Erlanger interchange, all the Florence interchange. You can't just add a lane without redoing all of it. So it's not cheap, and that makes it $3.6 billion to Kentucky, or $2.6 billion to Kentucky and $1 billion to Ohio. But at least it solves a problem. It's not a partial incremental fix. Now, again, I don't think that's the solution. We still can't fund it. We can't identify the economic development associated with it. And again, we can't accept tolls. Of all things, we can't have tolls, and we're fortunate right now to have regulation and law at the state not to allow it, and we need to make sure it stays that way. So we went back and looked at the big picture. Again, we've got major issues on all our interstates. You see the two maps here. 2006, this was the outline of the region, and the red identifies the areas of traffic. 2006, the bigger the red line, the worse the traffic. As you can see, I-75 definitely has an issue, right? But doesn't stop at I-275. We're at I-71, 275, and 471 already are showing problems 10 years ago. In OKI's projection, they projected what would happen if they didn't improve the bridge, what would happen. And you can see that it's not about I-75. It's I-275, I-471, 75. It's a regional issue, and we got to come up with a regional solution. Other challenges that have been brought up that are more local to us, there's a need for a east-west connection on the southern end of Kenton County to Campbell County. Right now, a 536 has been brought up, but they're struggling to figure out how to cross the Licking. And Claremont County has a plan for a north-south access across their county. The other thing is 71 and 75 can be broken down into two problems, I guess, essentially. One is the regional through traffic that won't stop in our region anywhere between Richwood and Mason, or north of Mason, and commuter traffic. The 16-lane bridge is essentially a solution to try to help the commuter traffic situation, but it doesn't address regional traffic. So where's the regional traffic coming from? This map basically outlines the corridors that are crossing our bridge, which it's a major bridge. You've heard the argument that it's 5% of our GDP. It is a major part of our network. For OKI, 23% of the traffic, about 37,000 vehicles a day crossing the bridge, aren't stopping in our region, and would be candidates to take the Eastern Bypass, which I'll explain to you in a second. More than half of that regional through traffic is 18-wheel trucks. But most people I hear about being scared about getting on the bridge are the trucks, and they take up a lot more room than a normal vehicle, obviously. But also people want to give them a lot of space, which is understandable. So they're more than 2 cars each. And then in the growth plan, the trucks are planned to grow 3 times as fast as cars through the 2040 plan. So it's a major difference. One kind of an interesting thought is the same number of vehicles at peak rush hour are crossing I-471 as I-275. The difference is they're not trucks. And nobody feels a safety concern, or you very seldom hear a safety concern about crossing that bridge. So our solution was to build a bypass. The idea of the bypass is it is a road that people will naturally want to use. I-275 doesn't work as a bypass, and one major reason is because they shorted the short side of this in northern Kentucky, but it's an 11-mile longer trip than our bypass proposal. It's a 17-mile trip out of the way for a truck driver to take that route. Now today they're using it because they still save time. Traffic, the route around 275 versus up through 75 are about the same when you check Google here and there. But they'll use this because it will save them time. While on I-75, it's 6 miles longer. It's also a 70-mile-per-hour speed limit with much better alignment, less busy, less interchanges, no 5% cut in the hill, vertical grade. With traffic, it'll save 45 minutes with normal I-75 traffic. It actually saves time to I-71, or it saves even more time to I-71. And again, so during traffic periods, the peak hours, it'll save you more than 30 minutes. So we're confident people will take it. Best of all, one of the major reasons we're in support of this, besides what it does for I-71 and 75, which is essentially add 1 lane of traffic capacity by diverting 25% of it off. It also helps I-275, I-71, and I-471. An interesting example, and somebody we've been working with, is a gravel quarry that's out in Batavia. And they're sending gravel to Walton or south of Walton all the time. They're sending trucks out. You go out on 32. You always see them running that road. Well, they wouldn't have to go into I-275, and they wouldn't have to come through Erlanger either. And it gives them a major route. And there's tons of businesses on the east side, or even businesses in Erlanger that want to get to the east side that can help. So all those red roads, it's over 200 miles of road network, will benefit in some form or fashion from the bypass. Another major opportunity is that maximizes our job growth potential. The city of Cincinnati, the regional chamber, their development board, I think it's ready. was in the paper 6 months ago saying that they're short and can't be competitive because they're lacking 25-acre manufacturing sites in the region. Well, this obviously opens up a huge amount of development and job opportunities. And most of all, right now, we're estimated it's $1.1 billion, which is half of just a 6-mile stretch of I-75. Adding lanes to existing infrastructure is extremely expensive. It doesn't seem like it, but essentially you got to tear the whole road out and rebuild it all again. And that's a lot more expensive than going out in the countryside and running 2 lanes out where you're not impacting anybody in their traffic. Just a minor thing is this has been pretty inconvenient for the last 3 weeks on the Brent Spence Bridge, just for them to do some minor rework. Imagine what it would take for the 10 years of construction involved in I-75 and the Brent Spence Bridge. So and some other opportunities is maximizing the current bridges we have. So Route 9 just got funded, I think, just recently to finish Route 9 from Taylor Mill and utilizing the Taylor Southgate Bridge, which will be great. Again, it's well under capacity, so that'll move an extra 20,000 cars a day. And then we can use Clayway Bailey Bridge. I heard a joke the other day that, you know why they named it the Clayway Bailey Bridge? And the answer was, it's because those are the 2 people that drive on it. So, I mean, it's got some major challenges, mainly because of the train trestles down there. But that's cheap work relative to the bridge work to fix that solution and utilize Main Street further, and maybe even bring it up to 12th Street. And finally, there's major improvements we can make to the Brent Spence Bridge today that increase flow, capacity, and safety. We can reconfigure the entrances and exits, which I'll review with you, improve the signage and lighting, and just to remind you guys, the bridge is safe and sound, structurally sound. When I say safe, it's challenged with capacity. But it is structurally sound, it's not falling into the river. So the idea of what we can do for the alignment, and Covington's been largely supportive of this, was to close the 4th Street on-ramp on the bridge, for those of you that are familiar with it. When you get on the 4th Street on-ramp right by the Radisson, the rotating restaurant there, you get on and you have a dedicated lane, but to get to 75, you got to get over 2 more lanes. I went to high school across the river. I hit a car one morning doing that, but it's dangerous and it definitely impedes traffic. And worst of all is that you've got an entire lane that's dedicated to one entrance on a bridge that's under capacity. But the idea is to take that 4th Street on-ramp, run it southbound. The infrastructure is already there. Essentially, that's how you get onto I-75 South. Have them exit back onto the Pike Street. Again, it's all similar to Erlanger. It's got a interchange off the expressway, basically, and have them get back on at Pike Street with the 12th Street on-ramp. So that combines the traffic from the 4th Street on-ramp and the 12th Street on-ramp to utilize the entire lane getting on, and allows that lane to go through. And best of all, though, it allows 3 full lanes coming from Erlanger and Fort Wright to go on the bridge without any merging activity into them. Right now, the 12th Street on-ramp has to merge into those 3 lanes, so effectively it's 2.5 lanes. So we estimate that it will add 15% more capacity, which will be noticeable going northbound. Again, this is something that Covington's been supportive of as well. Additionally to that, we can help with signage because we don't have to have all that merging activity as on the bridge. We can put signage further out. People can pick their lanes in the cut and the hill and essentially be in the right spot, causing much smoother traffic flow. So we believe, the Cincinnati Eastern Bypass believes the bypass should be our highest priority, and there's a few reasons. One is it helps job growth much more than I-75. It'll add capacity to I-71, 75, and other areas. There's a great benefit to all the other roads across Claremont, Campbell, Warren, and Kenton County. That highway savings could be allocated for other transportation projects. Maybe it's increasing bus service, or again, it's not that it can't be used to help I-75 in the long term as well. It'll reduce construction intensity in town. A large part of all the reconstruction that we've had in the last 5 years on or on I-75 has been because of trucks. They're what caused the wear and tear, and by getting those outside of our region, the roads will last twice as long. So it's a great benefit to move it out. There's air quality impacts, which I don't fully understand, but obviously by getting the trucks out, it'll help the air quality of downtown, and I know there's some EPA regulations that somehow impede our opportunities. And it costs less, and it has more funding opportunities. The great thing about the bypass is we can quickly identify what's causing growth, and we can quickly justify that we'll get our money back, or whether it's our tax money through the development dollars, or maybe it's a TIF that helps fund it. And the P-flip is something that, while even if the Brent Spence Bridge gets funded in the next 5 to 10 years, we can do that tomorrow. It's virtually no cost. I mean, we're talking about $5 million to go and fix everything on I-75 versus the $2.6 billion that we're talking about. And I don't even know what else to talk about with deferred cost, but. So what's happened recently? I don't know you guys, this isn't the first presentation or first conversation Erlanger's had about it. But the Claremont County engineer reviewed the bypass. They confirmed that it would be less than $2 billion. The Claremont County commissioners voted unanimously in support of the study. City of Covington passed a similar resolution to what has been distributed to you guys, supporting the study of the bypass and right-sizing the Brent Spence Bridge project, as well as investigating alternatives like the P-flip. Kentucky is currently studying the Brent Spence corridor in I-71 75 and the bypass, and they're spending $2 million, KYTC is, and that study should be up in September. One thing I'd say, and one of the reasons I'm here with you, is that I still believe there's political motivation behind that project, and that they're not completely seeing the whole picture. And this is a chance to get our voices heard before there's a conclusion. So this is a great time to impact some decision makers. For what it's worth, Ohio has passed legislation as well in their state funding project to review the study and present and coordinate with the Ohio leadership. So Ohio's got their eye on it too. So what are we asking you to do? We want you to denounce the current Brent Spence Bridge corridor plan. At the very least, ask you get it right sized that makes sense. 16 lanes won't make sense unless they're giving you 6, each way on in Erlanger. So you either fix the plan or you got to forget it. And that they're going to get it down to Walton. We want you to denounce tolls, which I think you already have, and force other funding solutions, whether or not that's federal money or state money. One of the things about tolls too is the revenue that they're projecting, one won't be met. They're projecting a lot of growth, but worse off is when that revenue is not met, Kentucky's guaranteeing the debt. So essentially Kentucky's paying somebody the profits while taking all the risk, which doesn't work well. Fix and enhance the bridges as soon as possible. With the P-flip, we can do that tomorrow. Next year, they're painting the bridge as part of their project, and it's already funded. It could be part of that solution. Evaluate other supplements, including the Cincy Eastern Bypass, and build it as soon as possible. The Eastern Bypass, one thing that's critical about that is if you look at Warren County here, Warren County, that's between Dayton and Cincinnati, right? Just north of Mason. That's the quickest developing area in the city. In the next 10 years, it'll be closed off. There won't be a chance to put that road in. It'll be much too expensive. So at the very least, we got to get the right-of-way. This needs to be on the map, and the right-of-way needs to be purchased, or it will never happen, and we'll lose that opportunity as a region. So that's the urgency. That's why we're saying it needs to happen before the bridge. So I guess I'll leave that to questions from you guys.
Hey, Don, speak into the mic, please.
Okay. The biggest problem that you have is you've got 71 coming, 74, 75 coming to south.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you're old enough, but when they built the bridge, 71 was supposed to go through Newport. They call it 471 now, and it went on out in Kenton County, and it joined up out the other side of Walton on 71. And you got 71 actually coming into 75.
Right.
If they finish that up, it'd be good. But the understanding I had, the people there in Cold Springs did not want it, so they stopped there. Now, if they had that on over, it would certainly help because 71 would not be merging onto the bridge.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely. I don't know the history on why it didn't happen, but you're absolutely right that that's the regional thought process that we needed.
Plan.
Right, and having the loop be deeper would have helped a lot.
Now, if you want to build your other plan, you're going to go through Campbell County.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you couldn't get 71 go through it, how are you going to get something else to go through it?
We've had a good amount of support from Campbell County. Tyson Foods, for example, is one of I think the largest private employer. It's right by the high school in Campbell County on 27. This route, they're sending 50 trucks a day up and down 27 to come up to up to 275 and come back south on 75. And so there's another big, it was Griffin Indices, Darpro in northern Pendleton County is starving for access as well. So there's real businesses that could thrive out there that are missing that opportunity, and I think there's some support. While we don't have the judge executive yet, there's some support. And I think the other thing is if they start talking about I-471 and their $1.8 billion project and tolls, it's going to shut them off too. Right now they've largely stayed out of the argument because it doesn't affect them a whole lot. But all of a sudden it will be.
Don't you think if they finished up 71 through Campbell, come over to Kenton, that would help relieve traffic on the bridge?
It would absolutely help, but I don't think, the problem is a lot of that corridor is developed now, and I think you could build the bypass for as cheap, or even cheaper, so I think it would help more. But it's completely, you're absolutely right, that if we would have done that 50 years ago, that would have been the better solution.
You could still do it.
Well, it's reworking an entire roadway structure versus out in an open field. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying it's not a...
But what, if you build this, how much right-of-way are you going to have to take?
But it's farmland largely, so it's 10 or 20,000 an acre versus 27 and all those businesses up along 27. It's a much higher valued property.
But after you get through Cold Spring, Fort Thomas, well, it goes to Fort Thomas, but you get through Cold Spring, Alexander, that's pretty much all.
Don, this proposal is like 10 miles south of there.
I'm not good. I can't argue. I'd gladly see that too. I just think that there's less regional benefit to it, but it would help.
I'm not an engineer, but I think they had plans 40 years ago.
They recently evaluated that cost on that during the first, when they were looking at the original options for the bridge. That was evaluated as a possibility, but I couldn't tell you what all was involved in that.
What was wrong with it?
What's that? Cold Spring?
That's right.
Okay.
And Fort Thomas didn't want all that traffic go through there.
Yeah.
All right.
What else we got?
Mr. Blankenship?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions on the cost. I think I saw you said 1.1 billion was the cost. Is that just for the Eastern Bypass, or does it also include the fixes on the Brent Spence Bridge?
No, we estimate, I think the Brent Spence Bridge could be done for less than $5 million. We've been saying it, you use $20 million to fix everything and do a really good job planning through Covington, et cetera. For the bypass, that includes a new bridge, over the Ohio River, obviously, as part of the route. You want more detail on that?
Yeah, and that's the estimate, all the land acquisition costs, the construction costs and everything.
Yeah, so just to give you a quick idea, we've engineered it. We've got multiple routes running through the region. This is an example of a topographic map for one section crossing the river, but we've got grading plans for it. We have an idea of what the right-of-way is. Again, we've had Claremont County engineer validate, again, it was less than 2 billion. It wasn't the same number we had, but we modeled it after recently built projects. One project that we used was Route 17 in Independence. There was a bypass built in Nashville, Nashville 840. It was 80 miles that was built for 10 million a mile. And it had 4 interstate interchanges and similar river crossings. We assumed 15 million a mile.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Corrine?
How many cities in northern Kentucky besides Covington has agreed to this so far?
The resolution, similar to what I provided, or that we provided, none. I think, well, let me redo that. Fort Wright's taken some positions on it, similar to you guys historically, and I'm presenting them tomorrow night. But since the mayor's meeting, this is the first meeting I've met with anybody.
Oh, okay, okay. Because, I mean, I understand the businesses are worried that, because when 275 went in, that killed the businesses on Dixie Highway. And so I understand their thoughts, but then on the flip side, if I were wanting to go to Erlanger, I would much rather drive to Erlanger knowing there's not 10 million semis and all that are going to be there, and then we're going to have Amazon and all that, so that's going to bring people in too. So I mean, I really don't think it's going to hurt the businesses as much as they might think.
I'm confused on the semis.
Well, you know, right now our cops are constantly, there's accidents all over right by Showcase Cinemas and stuff, so if you have this eastern bypass, a lot of them will be going on. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I see many positives towards this eastern bypass.
Right. I mean, the same for downtown. My argument's always been is now you get the people that actually want to go to your city and spend money versus the people that are having to go through your city. It encourages more inter-region transportation, which should help our economy.
And I think because of what's going on at the airport, we're going to get traffic because there's a lot of buildup here anyway. So I think we should be okay.
Right. I appreciate that. One thing on 75, and one of my arguments is that by opening up a lane of traffic and moving that regional through traffic, again, that's noted as not stopping. They don't stop here. That's what was measured. We're opening up a lane of traffic for people that want to be there, and even Amazon, I mean, that adds capacity that they can utilize.
Saw some other hands up. Mrs. Kyle?
I have to agree with Mr. Nicely. I remember when the Brent Spence was first built and the whole expressway system, and a lot of people who came from out of town were talking about what was the idiot that built this or designed this because it was so outdated. You still had the bottlehead coming off the bridge. And so, as you said before, when you add all those lanes to the bridge, that makes sense. You're still going to have that bottleneck. I'm totally against the tolls. My question is, how much will this cost our citizens in Erlanger, the bypass? Is there a cost for us?
I guess there's a lot of different ways you could fund this project, and that hasn't been identified. But if I'm answering the question, I mean, I guess perfect world, the state would fund it, and it would be out of the transportation budget.
I would think that the state would fund it, and still we'd be paying taxes, but
right, but I don't see how
there's no cost to us if we adopt this plan and say, hey, I'm for the bypass, I'm totally against the tolls, is what I'm saying.
No, I don't know how it costs. I mean, I don't know how it affects you negatively.
We're not paying for any bypass study or anything like that.
No. The study's already in place right now. It's largely making it known that you're a supporter. And we've got the 5th largest city in Kentucky, Covington, and I think you guys are like 7th or something along those lines. I think it'd be both directly affected, so I think it sends a strong message to the state.
And I agree with Corinne. I don't think it's going to hurt Erlanger because I myself, I would much rather go 275 when I go over to, let's say, Colerain or whatever. I do not want to get on that bridge at all. It's terrible. So I think something like that would be great. And I don't think it would hurt our businesses at all. I mean, we still have, you're going to have less traffic on 275 and 75 if you have a bypass, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So I think I would be for this.
When is the study supposed to be finalized?
My understanding is drafts are starting to circulate.
Okay.
But I think
That's what I was
it's in
thinking.
September is what I
That's
know
what
at this point.
Okay, that's what I had in my mind as well. I thought I saw another hand up over here. Sure, go ahead, Ms. Dietz.
Thank you, Mayor. If this bypass had already been built before the summer, how much of the traffic would have been able to be diverted to prevent the bottleneck that we have during this construction?
I mean, for Erlanger, everything you're seeing to go to IT-75 would be going on the bypass. I don't think, I'm not sure on the, I know you have your entrance closed on the other side.
Well, I just speak for the whole region. I mean,
Yeah.
I live in Erlanger, I go downtown. So even the bridge traffic, what percentage would you predict would have been able to take the pass around in here before they did all this bridge?
Okay, that's a good question. So with the 2 lanes closed on the bridge, half of the traffic is going a different route. Okay, most of them are probably taking I-275. But some of them, like Covington residents, just aren't getting on the expressway, whereas they used to. So essentially, half the traffic is going a different way. Half of that traffic would take the bypass. It's a quarter of the traffic is estimated that is regional through traffic that wouldn't be stopping, so they'd automatically take it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And the thing to keep in mind too is every summer we always have construction on 75 someplace.
Yeah.
So even if this time it's on the bridge, sometimes it's someplace.
Well, and a lot of
We'll always have that because it's something.
well, right.
The bypass will help every summer.
And it should, in addition to that, it should decrease the need for it as often. Like I said, the wear and tear is half, I mean, that's from the truck, so it'll be half as often that they have to do construction. It's unbelievable how quickly we have to re-pave lanes. And that's what a lot of the construction's been. Now, there's other capacity stuff that's been addressed.
I've got a suggestion for you. During Martha Lane Collins, when she was governor of Kentucky, we had the same problem. She made all the truckers go on 275, and you didn't have as much trouble as you do now. She was a very smart lady, but you don't do it now.
But we don't require it now, right?
But they had the problem, and she came along and says, no trucks go down the hill unless you got deliveries in Cincinnati locally.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go on 275.
Right.
You didn't have the problem that you got now.
No.
We had this a few years ago.
That would absolutely help I-75 now. And essentially, that's what the bypass is offering, that option. Now, it's not requiring it, right? It's giving them a better route, so they do it naturally. I think my understanding, again, I don't have all the history on this, is one of the pushbacks was the truckers associations and unions were pushing back against it. Versus, I think largely we've seen support for the bypass from that same group.
Can I make a comment about the 275 part? Number one is, I was the police chief and working as a police assistant chief at the time when that went into effect. Got the police department sitting out here. Just to let you know what kind of effect that had on the city of Erlanger, Mr. Nicely, is that our accidents were about 75 to 80 a month at the time. When they put that in, that restriction, our accidents went to 115 to 120 a month. And they were a lot worse accidents. So the resources that the city of Erlanger had to spend and would have to spend for the truck restriction on Benzpitch Bridge is astronomical. It helps the city of Erlanger zero.
I think I've heard you say, too, that it was impossible to enforce.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Yeager said the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
All right, any other comments or discussion on this?